Black CEO, mocked by white. Female CEO at Billionaire's, Gala. Minutes later, she erased a $4. 9B Empire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. A farm girl at our Billionaire's Gala? The words cracked through the ballroom like a whip dipped in ice. Laughter, sharp, privileged, synchronized, burst from every corner of the crystal-lit hall. Chandeliers trembled overhead as if recoiling from the cruelty below. At the center table, surrounded by tuxedos, sequins, and champagne worth more than most people's monthly salaries, Amina Rhodes sat perfectly still. Her burnt orange gown caught the glow of the chandelier, giving her the quiet radiance of a flame refusing to be smothered. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't allow the insult to stain the calm carved into her expression. Across from her, Victoria Langford, wrapped in a scarlet designer dress and arrogance she wore like a second skin, leaned forward with a smile stretched too wide to be anything but malicious. Her manicured finger pointed straight at Amina as the guests around her howled. "Oh, come on," Victoria taunted, pretending playfulness, dripping venom. "Look at her, she's adorable. Did someone win a raffle to get in here tonight?" More laughter, cheering even. Someone clinked a glass to celebrate the humiliation, as if it were entertainment planned for the night. Phone screens rose, cameras powered on. A room full of billionaires suddenly had the hunger of spectators at a Roman arena. Amina's posture didn't shift. She sat like marble carved with purpose, unmoving, elegant, unbreakable. Only her eyes flickered, catching the reflection of chandeliers, revealing something colder than anger and deeper than pride, a warning. But no one in the room recognized it, not yet. A man 2 seats down snickered. Which donor brought her? Be honest, was it for diversity optics? Another chimed in. Or did she sneak in through the catering entrance? Even the waiter paused, uncertain whether to pour champagne or simply watch the unfolding spectacle. Victoria raised her glass triumphantly. Relax, people. She's clearly overwhelmed. Probably never seen this much luxury in one room. It was a strange moment, opulence turning feral, refinement unraveling into cruelty. The gala music faltered. The polished brass of the orchestra stumbled over a note. Even the air seemed to contract around Amina as if the room were holding its breath, waiting to see if she would break. She didn't. She simply placed her napkin beside her plate, fingers steady, movements deliberate as if she were preparing for something the others couldn't yet see. Her chin lifted by a fraction, a gesture subtle but sovereign. It was the kind of calm that doesn't announce itself. It radiates. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amina. Victoria leaned closer, voice coated in sugar and spite. Sweetheart, don't look so tense. People like you should be grateful you even made it onto the guest list. A ripple of discomfort finally moved across a few faces, but none dared speak. The room had chosen its role tonight, audience to humiliation. Amina's gaze rose slowly, meeting Victoria's eyes, not defiant, not wounded, but devastatingly steady. And in that instant, if anyone in that ballroom had truly been paying attention, they would have felt it. The shift, the drop in temperature, the first tremor of a consequence silently forming. No one knew a $4, 9B empire was about to shatter. No one knew the woman they mocked was the architect of their own survival. No one knew the storm, sitting in a burnt orange gown, had just opened her eyes. But they would. In minutes, the laughter didn't fade, it multiplied. Like perfume spilled across marble, it spread too quickly, too easily, too comfortably. A man in a velvet tuxedo leaned toward his date, smirking as he nodded subtly in Amina's direction. "You can tell she's not from our circles," he murmured, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "Look at her posture, Shez, trying so hard to fit in." His date giggled. the kind of soft, breathy cruelty that pretends to be harmless. Another woman snapped a photo, whispering, "This is going to blow up on social. Farm girl crashes billionaire gala. Has a ring to it." Phones glowed, screens tilted. The ballroom's warmth turned acidic. Amina didn't move, still that same quiet flame in burnt orange, but the circle around her tightened, not physically, but socially. The kind of tightening that happens when a room decides someone doesn't belong and expects them to disappear on command. Victoria lounged back in her seat, basking in the attention like a performer who'd nailed the opening act. "Relax, everyone," she announced dramatically. "Be kind." I'm sure she didn't mean to stumble into the main room. These events can be confusing for newcomers. More laughter. More eyes on Amina. A waiter hesitated beside her, gripping the champagne bottle a little too tightly, unsure if the right move was to pour or step away. His uncertainty became part of the spectacle. Everyone wanted to see how Amina would react, whether the intruder would shrink or flee. But Amina simply turned her head slightly, observing the room. The chandeliers, the polished silverware, the dozens of faces twisted in amusement. Her gaze was steady, unhurried, clinical, almost, as if she were watching a story unfold rather than living inside its cruelty. Across the table, an older investor leaned in conspiratorially toward Victoria. "Did someone really bring her? I thought this section was exclusive to primary stakeholders." Victoria twirled her champagne flute like a trophy. "Oh, it is," she said sweetly. "That's why this is so entertaining." The orchestra resumed its melody, but it stumbled, notes bending under the tension, humming through the room. Even music seemed unsure how to exist between the laughter and the malice. Someone from the crowd raised a hand. "Hey, sweetheart," he called across the table to Amina. "If you smile, you'll blend in better. We won't bite." The table roared. Amina's breath left her in the smallest exhale, quiet, controlled, a blink, a shift in her shoulders, almost imperceptible, but beneath it was steel, a kind of unshakable gravity gathering around her presence. She finally spoke, not loud, not angry, but clear. "Interesting," she said softly. Her voice wasn't a rebuttal. It was a scalpel. The table fell into a curious hush. Even Victoria's smirk faltered, surprised that her target had spoken at all. Amina let her gaze sweep the faces around her. The confidence with which people speak, when they're certain they know who they're talking to. A ripple of discomfort. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Someone lowered their phone. Victoria snorted to break the tension. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. No one here meant harm." The lie shivered between crystal glasses. Amina tilted her head slightly, as if studying a work of abstract art. "I'm sure." But the tone, the restraint, the control sent a quiet tremor through the table, the kind that whispers, "You've made a mistake." Victoria waved dismissively. "Well, if you're that sensitive, sweetheart, maybe the farm really was a better fit." Another round of laughter, but weaker now. Cracks forming, something shifting. Amina's eyes lowered to her fingertips, resting lightly on the table. Calm, grounded, unmoved. Then she lifted her gaze again, and this time, the room felt it. Not anger, not humiliation, judgment. And from that single, measured look, a strange silence rippled outward, as if even the walls understood what the guests didn't. The storm hadn't arrived. It had been sitting there the whole time. But to understand the silence now creeping across the table, to understand why a single measured breath from Amina carried more weight than all of Victoria's theatrics, you'd have to know who she really was. Not the woman they imagined. Not the farm girl in their jokes. Not the outsider they projected onto the empty spaces of their own arrogance. Amina Rhodes had been underestimated long before this night. She grew up on land big enough to hold the sky, but small enough to be ignored on every map. A stretch of rural Georgia where the earth cracked under summer heat and opportunity didn't grow unless you forced it to. Her grandmother raised her with hands worn from fieldwork and a voice that spoke truth like scripture. "Child, the world will try to guess your worth," she used to say. "Never let it speak louder than you." Amina carried those words the way others carried heirlooms. In high school, she built miniature wind turbines from scrap metal. In college, she coded through the night in a borrowed lab, because her scholarship required 3 jobs and time wasn't something she owned. By 27, she had patented a modular energy grid technology that Fortune 100 companies tried to buy. She declined every offer. She didn't want a payout. She wanted a platform, so she built one. Rhodes' horizons began in a garage behind a rundown farmhouse. Today, it stretched across continents: energy, fintech, aerospace, climate AI, a $58 billion empire, built not on inheritance, but on clarity, precision, and refusal to shrink for anyone. And the strangest part? Almost no one had ever seen her face. Amina avoided interviews, panels, cameras. She let her executives shine while she operated from quiet rooms where decisions reshaped industries. Anonymous power wasn't a weakness to her, it was insulation, freedom, control, which is exactly why tonight's humiliation didn't pierce her dignity. It only revealed theirs. Across the ballroom, a digital display scrolled through the logos of attending companies' names gilded in reputation and history. Near the bottom, almost unnoticed, was the smallest one on the screen: Rhodes Horizons, strategic partner, pending finalization. The deal everyone whispered about tonight? The $4.9 capital infusion Langford Dynamics needed to survive? The partnership the board had begged Victoria not to jeopardize? That entire deal hinged on a woman sitting 3 feet away, adjusting her napkin with the calm of someone who held the fate of empires on the tip of her patience. But Victoria didn't know that. None of them did. Why would they? They saw a dress too simple, skin they underestimated, silence they mistook for weakness, poise they misread as submission. They didn't recognize the shape of power when it didn't look like theirs. A man 2 tables over checked the time on his watch, muttering to his colleague, "Is Rhodes Horizons rep even here? Langford needs that partnership locked tonight." His colleague shrugged. "Probably some 60-year-old board relic. They're always late to these events." Amina heard it. She heard all of it. And finally, a softness touched her expression. Not amusement, not anger, something closer to resignation. They had no idea. Victoria, still oblivious, leaned back with a smug grin. "You see, this is why pedigree matters. Some circles are built on legacy." Not Amina's gaze cut to her before she finished the sentence. Victoria's words tangled on her tongue, because for the first time, she felt that subtle gravity around Amina, shifting, sharpening, becoming something unmistakably dangerous. Not loud, not violent, just absolute. The kind of presence that makes a room realize too late. They didn't mock a guest. They mocked the woman holding their lifeline. And the cracks beneath the surface of Langford's empire were already starting to widen. Across the ballroom, the Langford dynasty glimmered the way all dying stars do, brightest right before collapse. Victoria Langford had been raised beneath chandeliers just like these, in rooms where her last name opened more doors than her ideas ever did. Shed always believed that power was inherited, not earned. That wealth was a birthright, not a responsibility. That respect was automatic, not reciprocal. And for most of her life, the world had agreed. Her father, Charles Langford, had built Langford Dynamics into a titan 3 decades ago. Defense contracts, aerospace expansions, high-level government partnerships. But behind the polished PR and annual charity galas, the company had been rotting from the inside. Charles was brilliant, yes, but he was reckless. He mistook risk for vision, scale for success, and loyalty for silence. Those habits became Victoria's inheritance. 3 years ago, when her father stepped down after a health scare, Victoria ascended into the CEO chair, photo ops, magazine covers, keynote stages. She enjoyed the role, the spotlight, the applause. But she didn't see the cracks beneath the marble floor she stood on. Not at first. Only the board knew that Langford Dynamics had overextended itself. Failed aerospace contracts, a disastrous energy acquisition, 2 lawsuits quietly settled, and a dangerous burn rate that the company could no longer mask. Their capital reserves were thin, their leverage ratios worse. Their name, though still respected, no longer guaranteed stability. They needed cash, a lot of cash. Fast, which is how the $4.9 billion Partnership with Rhodes Horizons became their one lifeline, a strategic infusion that would not only stabilize the company, but restore investor confidence overnight. The plan was delicate, the timeline narrow, the stakes existential. And yet, Victoria had never bothered to ask what the CEO of Rhodes Horizons looked like. Shed relied on stereotypes and assumptions, picturing some older, stern-faced technologist, someone she could charm, impress, manipulate, someone who would fit neatly inside her worldview. Instead, she mocked that woman to her face. Now, as the orchestra's strings trembled again, Victoria lifted her glass with the smug complacency of someone convinced she was untouchable. But a few board members seated across the room weren't laughing anymore. They'd noticed Amina's posture, her calm, her eyes calculating, observant, far too familiar for comfort. One whispered to another, "Did you see her wristband badge? That's the color-coded tier for primary partners." The other's expression paled. "Impossible. Rhodes Horizons rep hasn't checked in yet." A third replied quietly, "Then who is she?" Victoria didn't hear any of it. She didn't notice the tension tightening around her. She didn't see the unease spreading across her own supporters' faces. Hubris has a way of deafening its host. She simply kept performing. "You know," she told the investors at her table, "once the Rhodes deal closes, we're going to accelerate expansion into Europe. My team is already drafting the press release. Assuming Rhodes actually signs," one said carefully. Victoria waved dismissively. "Please. Companies like theirs beg for partnerships like ours. It'll be done tonight." A single sentence so small, so confident, revealed everything she misunderstood about the world. Power wasn't a crown handed down. It was an engine you built yourself. And Victoria had mistaken legacy for leverage. From across the room, one board member tracked Amina with growing dread. "If she's who I think she is," he whispered, "Victoria has no idea what she's just done." Another swallowed hard. Then God help us. Because the Langford Empire wasn't just cracking, it was already falling, and the woman Victoria tried to humiliate was holding the last unbroken piece. The Gala's laughter faltered for a second, just a hairline fracture in the noise, but enough for Amina to hear the truth behind it. Not entertainment, not confusion, entitlement. The kind that assumed she would sit there forever, absorbing humiliation like a sponge meant to clean their messes. Victoria leaned in again, swirling her champagne, emboldened by her audience. "You're awfully quiet, sweetheart. Cat got your tongue? Or is this just overwhelming for you?" Her smile was sugar-dipped poison. Someone across the table chuckled. "Maybe she's calculating how to get back to the barn." A few others snickered. Amina's fingers brushed the stem of her glass light, almost tender. But the stillness of her hand, the precision, the slow inhale she took, anyone who had ever worked with her would have recognized it instantly. It was the breath she took right before changing the fate of a room. She set the glass down with a soft, deliberate click, a sound too small to matter. Yet the people closest to her felt it like a shift in air pressure before a storm breaks open. Amina reached for her phone, not rushed, not flustered, not hiding it. She unlocked the screen with a single swipe, her expression unreadable calm, unhurried, inevitable. Across the ballroom, a Rhodes Horizons senior advisor spotted her movements and stiffened. He whispered to his colleague, "That's the gesture she's about to make a call." The colleague swallowed hard. "I thought Rhodes hadn't arrived yet." "She has," the advisor murmured, and no one realized. Victoria, still oblivious, tilted her head. "Texting already? Oh, darling, you don't have to call for help. We're just having fun." Amina finally looked at her. One glance, silent, unblinking, and for the first time, Victoria's smile strained just a hairline crack, but enough to betray something primal beneath it. Uncertainty. Amina typed one message. 7 words. Pull everything. Effective immediately. A.R. She pressed send. It was quiet. So quiet that the orchestra's distant vibrato sounded like thunder. Inside Rhodes Horizons' secure servers, alerts began to bloom red, urgent, immediate. Capital flows froze. Pending transfers reversed. A $4. 9. B. Partnership file closed itself as all authorization signatures vanished. Every channel, every node, every automated queue recognized the command of the one person who held ultimate authority. Within seconds, the entire infrastructure of Langford's pending salvation began collapsing inward. None of it showed on Amina's face. She simply locked her phone, placed it gently beside her plate, and folded her hands, elegant, composed, dignified. Victoria noticed the movement and scoffed. "What? Calling a friend to pick you up?" Amina's voice was soft, so soft the table leaned in despite themselves. "No," she said. "I'm ending something." A tremor rippled through the room's atmosphere. Not fear. Not yet. Just an instinctive awareness like birds before an earthquake. A board member across the hall looked down at his vibrating phone. The notification drained the color from his face. "Oh, God," he whispered. "It's happening." Another phone buzzed, then another, and another. A wave of alerts spread through the ballroom like a silent alarm only the powerful could hear. Victoria frowned at the sudden shift around her. "What's going on? Why is everyone checking their phones?" Amina didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes remained steady, fixed on the woman who had spent the last 10 minutes decorating cruelty with champagne bubbles. The first crack in Langford's empire had already formed, and in the stillness of her poise, Amina Rhodes had just pushed. The first alerts arrived like distant thunder, quiet, scattered, almost ignorable. A phone buzzing, then two, then a dozen, then a rippling wave of vibrations rolling across the ballroom like a pulse no one could see but everyone could feel. Investors frowned at their screens, board members stiffened, whispers sharpened to murmurs, then to sudden, choking silence. Victoria, still blissfully unaware, watched the confusion with a puzzled smile. "What's wrong with everyone? Did we lose Wi-Fi or something?" No one answered her. At the far end of the room, Marcus Reeves, Langford's CFO, went sheet white as he read the emergency alerts streaming onto his device. Numbers were disappearing, literally vanishing from internal dashboards. The Rhodes Horizons portal showed withdrawal notices stamped with the highest authorization code, Amina's. He muttered, "No, no, 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 this can't be real. She didn't just, but she had." He looked up slowly, eyes tracking across the crowd until they landed on the woman in burnt orange, sitting still, composed, watching the unraveling of his world with the tranquility of a surgeon observing vital signs drop on a monitor. He felt the ground tilt under him. Had never met her in person. He didn't need to. He recognized the look. It was the look of someone who pressed a button knowing exactly what systems would burn. Another alert landed on his screen. Transfer reversal complete. Capital freeze initiated. All Langford ledgers set to review status. He stumbled toward the board table. "Victoria," he hissed, voice tight. "I need to speak with you. Now." She waved him off. "Marcus, please. Not now. We're having a moment." He grabbed her shoulder, gentle but desperate. "Victoria," he repeated. "We have a situation." She rolled her eyes. "Can it wait until after dessert?" Before he could respond, every screen in the investors section lit up with a live system notice. Rhodes Horizons has terminated partnership negotiations effective immediately. Gasps erupted around the room. Glasses stilled in midair. The orchestra faltered entirely, bows hovering, strings trembling. Victoria blinked, confused. What is that? A glitch?" But the faces turning toward her weren't confused. They were horrified. An elderly board member whispered, "Oh God, she doesn't know." Another replied, "She has no idea who she mocked." Marcus swallowed hard. "Victoria, Rhodes Horizons CEO is here tonight." "Well, where is he then?" she snapped. "Let him explain this mess." Marcus didn't need to point. His eyes slid toward Amina. Victoria followed his gaze. Amina sat in absolute stillness, hands folded, expression unreadable, a quiet authority radiating from her like cold light. It took Victoria 3 long seconds to understand. Then her face drained of color. "No," she breathed. "No, that's not she's." Not Amina didn't look away, didn't blink, didn't soften. Marcus continued, voice cracking. "Shay's the signatory on every document. The withdrawal came from her personal authorization line. She is Rhodes Horizons." Victoria's breath hitched, sharp and small. The room watched her break in real time. But the financial detonation had only just begun. Across trading floors in New York, London, and Singapore, automated systems correlated the withdrawal notice with Langford Dynamics' unstable financial health. Risk algorithms ignited, sell signals amplified. Liquidation thresholds triggered one after another. Inside the Gala, phones buzzed again. LNG Diane. Stock down 8% down, 12% down, 17% in after hours. Someone whispered, "It's a free fall." "Another!" They're finished. Victoria shook her head violently, grabbing Marcus' arm. "Fix it. Call them. Undo it." "We can't," he whispered back. "Her command overrides everything, and the markets already know." A glass shattered somewhere behind them. A woman fainted into her husband's arms. Security whispered into earpieces, unsure whether this was a PR emergency or a structural collapse. Amina remained still, so composed it was almost unsettling. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't celebrating. She simply existed with the quiet weight of someone who had been pushed too far, too publicly, and had chosen a response measured in billions. Victoria staggered toward her. "You," her voice cracked. "You just destroyed us." Amina's reply was a whisper sharpened to a blade. "No, you did." She let the words settle, cold and precise. "All I did," she continued softly, "was remove the safety net you assumed was guaranteed." Victoria's knees wobbled as the orchestra fell completely silent, bows lowering in reverent dread. The Langford Empire wasn't just falling anymore. It was collapsing floor by floor, asset by asset, illusion by illusion, and all of it traced back to a woman they had mistaken for a punchline. Amina Rhodes had pressed one button, and an entire dynasty was now in freefall. Victoria's breath came shallow, uneven, as if the oxygen in the ballroom had thinned just for her. She stared at Amina, really stared this time, and for the first time all night she wasn't looking at a woman Shed mocked. She was looking at the storm that had unraveled her empire in minutes. "Amina," Victoria whispered, voice cracking. "You can't do this. You don't understand what this means." Amina rose from her chair. The motion was unhurried, graceful, but impossibly heavy, like the room shifted to accommodate her. Conversations died. Glasses froze mid-air. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim, as if the electricity itself bowed. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud. "It didn't need to be. I understand exactly what it means." Her presence drew the entire ballroom's attention. People leaned in without realizing. Cameras lifted again, but now they trembled in the hands that held them. Amina's gaze swept the room, not seeking validation, not demanding apology, but exposing truth. "Tonight," she began, "you didn't mock a stranger. You mocked a partner, a leader, a woman who has built every inch of her life with work no one here has ever had to do." Whispers rippled outward like wind through dry grass. She looked back at Victoria. "You assumed I didn't belong. You assumed I came from nothing. And even if that were true, why should that make me less than you?" Victoria's lips parted, but no words came out. Amina stepped closer, just one quiet footfall, and the room seemed to hold itself rigid. "For 10 minutes, you mistook your arrogance for superiority," Amina said softly. "And in those same 10 minutes, you lost the only deal that could save your company." A strangled sound escaped. Victoria's throat a mixture of disbelief and collapsing pride. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "We can fix it. I'll apologize." Amina raised a hand not to silence her, but to stop the desperation from spilling further. "This isn't about an apology," she said. "Not anymore." Victoria blinked, tears threatening. "Please. My father built this company. Our employees, there are thousands of families. And I gave you respect the moment I entered this room," Amina replied. "You just didn't recognize it." A murmur swelled behind them. Investors, donors, executives, all watching the unraveling of a dynasty they once thought invincible. Amina continued, her tone almost gentle. "You used my silence as permission, my composure as weakness, my background as a joke." Then she leaned in, not menacing but impossibly calm. "But you forgot one thing, Victoria." Victoria swallowed hard. "What? What's that?" Amina's eyes didn't waver. "Power doesn't live in the room you inherit. It lives in the room you can walk into and still be whole. A collective gasp swept the ballroom, raw, electric, reverent. Victoria stumbled back a step, her world tilting. "You've ruined us," she whispered. "No," Amina answered. "You ruined yourself when you confused cruelty with class." At the edge of the room, Marcus Reeves received another wave of alerts. His voice shook as he read them. Langford stock halted, liquidity freeze incoming, board demanding an emergency call. The panic spread like wildfire, but at the center of it, Amina stood unmoving, anchored, sovereign. Victoria clasped her hands together as if praying to something already gone. "Please, Amina, we can undo this. Tell them you changed your mind." Amina's expression softened not with mercy but with clarity. "I don't reverse decisions made in dignity's defense." And with that, she stepped back, not away from conflict, but into the space of someone who had already won. The room knew it. Victoria knew it. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble with the realization. Amina Rhodes had not raised her voice. She had not demanded power. She had simply revealed it. And the moment she did, the Langford Empire fell to its knees. The fallout didn't arrive in a scream. It arrived in a vibration. One phone, then another. Then a cascade buzzing across the ballroom like a swarm of mechanical insects awakening at once. A man in a silver tie went pale, staring at the flashing red notification on his screen. "Oh my God. Langford's tanking. This is catastrophic." Another guest stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. 22% down? In minutes? That's impossible. But it wasn't. Not when Rhodes Horizons was involved. Across the world, automated trading systems registered the withdrawal and recalculated risk at lightning speed. Hedge funds initiated emergency protocols. Brokers issued immediate sell orders. Algorithms detected a massive destabilization event and followed their design. Protect capital. Purge liability. Drop the dead weight. Langford Dynamics was suddenly dead weight. Inside the ballroom, the panic became visible like a shadow spreading across marble. A senator's aide muttered, "We need to distance ourselves from this." Immediately, a venture capitalist whispered, "Pull our commitments, all of them, now." A journalist from a financial publication raised her phone, recording everything, her face lit by the glow of breaking news. Victoria watched the chaos swirl around her, each alert like a new crack splintering through her composure. "This isn't real," she gasped. "The system's malfunctioning. It has to be a glitch." But Marcus Reeves, the CFO, was reading the latest system notice with the expression of a man watching his own obituary being written. "It's not a glitch," he said, voice hollow. "The deal is dead. Liquidity is evaporating. Debt ratios are spiking. Creditors are initiating recall clauses. And," he blinked, stunned, "and we've been placed under provisional review by the Federal Financial Oversight Council." Victoria shook her head in disbelief. No, that only happens when a company is on the brink of collapse," Marcus whispered. A woman in a blue gown stumbled toward the exit, heels clattering against marble. "I need to call my advisor. My retirement portfolio is tied to Langford." The orchestra, unsure whether to continue or flee, slowly lowered their instruments. The lead violinist whispered, Is the event canceled?" But no one answered. No one was running the gala anymore. The evening had fractured into its own disaster. Cameras pivoted toward Amina, drawn like orbiting bodies around a gravitational force. She wasn't performing. She wasn't posing. She sat with the stillness of someone who has carried storms before and refuses to let them define her. The room suddenly realized this wasn't vengeance. This was consequence. The kind that comes when arrogance is allowed to flourish unchecked. A new headline alert pinged across dozens of screens. Breaking. Langford Dynamics faces massive collapse after Rhodes Horizons cancels $4. 9B deal. Another alert followed. Investors flee as stock halts. Board to convene emergency session tonight. Victoria swayed, gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only solid thing left in her world. "They're destroying us," she whispered. "They're destroying everything my family built." Amina finally rose again, her movements smooth, unhurried, despite the chaos swirling around her. "You destroyed it," she replied softly. I merely stopped cushioning the fall. Victoria's tear-filled eyes lifted toward her. Why couldn't you just tell me who you were? Amina regarded her with a calm, somber clarity. Because who I am shouldn't be the price of your respect. A single sentence won the room felt in their bones. Across the hall, a staff member rushed in breathless, whispering to the event coordinator. The coordinator's face drained. She looked at Amina, then Victoria, then the crowd, and made a trembling announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, due to unforeseen circumstances, the Windsor Pavilion is temporarily suspending the Gala program. Please remain calm as we coordinate transportation and media protocols. But the room was far past calm. Reporters surged toward the spotlight. Investors formed clusters of panic. Security moved to form discreet barriers between VIPs and the press. The air snapped with tension, a kind of electricity that tasted metallic on the tongue. Someone shouted, "Langford's credit line just froze." Another yelled, "We're locked out of the trading platform." A third murmured, "This is financial extinction." Victoria slumped into a chair, mascara streaking. "This can't be happening. My father will never survive this news." Amina's expression softened just enough to acknowledge human fragility, but not enough to excuse cruelty. "You treated my existence as a spectacle," she said. "Now the world is treating your negligence the same way." Through the chaos, a photographer captured a single, iconic frame. Victoria, breaking down. Amina standing calm, the chandelier above them, fractured into shards of reflected gold. It would become the image of the night, the image of the fall. And in that moment, the entire ballroom understood. The insult had lasted 10 minutes. The consequences would echo for decades. Outside the Windsor Pavilion, the night air was cool, steady, untouched by the chaos unraveling behind the doors. Amina stepped onto the marble steps, her heels clicking softly, calm, measured, unhurried. The city lights shimmered across her gown like quiet applause meant only for her. Through the chaos, a photographer captured a single, iconic frame. Victoria breaking down Amina, standing calm, the chandelier above them, fractured into shards of reflected gold. It would become the image of the night, the image of the fall. And in that moment, the entire ballroom understood. The insult had lasted 10 minutes. The consequences would echo for decades. Outside the Windsor Pavilion, the night air was cool, steady, untouched by the chaos unraveling behind the doors. Amina stepped onto the marble steps, her heels clicking softly, calm, measured, unhurried. The city lights shimmered across her gown like quiet applause meant only for her. As she descended the final step, her voice drifted into the night, soft enough to be intimate, firm enough to be truth. Respect should never depend on the room you enter, only the character you carry into it. And with that, Amina Rhodes disappeared into the waiting car, leaving behind a shattered empire and a legacy built not on noise, but on unwavering grace.